All right, today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about the top 3 business skills that you need and the difference between a professional and a business owner and why you might not need the exact same skills. Josh, want to go talk about some of the skills that you've seen in business that have been helpful and maybe the top skill that you've seen for successful business owners and successful business professionals?
Right. Yeah. You had mentioned like having a growth mindset. I think that one is probably the most important to me. I'd thrown out like being tenacious, but I think having a mindset kind of encompasses that. Like you need to always be thinking for what the new opportunity is and what the next steps will be in order to grow your business and gain clients, keep clients. I think that there's an interesting discussion to be had about specifically the growth mindset. And do you ever reach like enough? I definitely am around, I've run into a couple people who are business owners who are kind of like at capacity for their type of business and would say are maybe in the like, well, I've got enough. I'm not wired that way. And it doesn't seem like a great, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like, can you have a growth mindset, but be like, this is enough clients. I don't need to go any further.
I definitely think so, but kind of in a different way. So I think I know some of the people that you're talking about, and they feel okay with clients, but I do think in other areas, I can think of one specifically. So there's a guy who works on trees, and he usually talks about how he has enough clients, or he talked about, and that, I mean, that might be one of the people that you're mentioning here, but he was also trying to buy some more real estate potentially a while ago. I don't know if he still is. So I think in that case, he's totally fine with where he's at client wise for a business, but he is trying to get into other types of business. So I would say that someone who has the entrepreneurial mindset can't really help but try and do different things. So even if they think, the business they have currently is fine where it's at, they're most likely going to want to try something different or something new. And I think that's where the growth mindset comes, because maybe he's doing something with trees, then he goes and does something with real estate, which in reality aren't really that connected other than sometimes you have trees on where you live. So I think the growth mindset can be taken into any kind of business. And honestly, for the business professional too, who's not a business owner, the growth mindset is totally a necessity, because if you want to climb the ladder in your company, or maybe at some point you do want to go start your own business, learning new skills and always being open to something new is really important. And businesses can't really succeed if their owner doesn't have that kind of mindset to bounce back from failures and keep learning from those failures instead of I feel the reason why I thought this was important was because in school failure is bad, but in reality failure is good, because then you learn and you can learn new things. And so I don't think school has taught us well on how to succeed in the real world. It's taught us how to succeed in a classroom, and that's totally different. But that's just
Yeah. The weird thing about failing in school being bad, which I don't remember, I have not heard anybody like overtly teaching that, but it is sort of a mindset that is pervasive. Is it so anti like the scientific method? Like record things and try them, and then when they fail, make sure that you record them as a failure and then try more things. This is basic scientific method. You're going to do a bunch of stuff and most of them will fail, but every once in a while your hypothesis doesn't spectacularly get destroyed. But yeah, I think it's Nassim Taleb that says that you pretty much would need an IQ of 1,000 in order to beat trial and error. You just can't have enough intelligence to beat trial and error, because there's so many things you don't know or don't take into account that, especially as a business owner, just testing a bunch of small things can add up to some big changes over time. And then of course, and I think I don't know which book, maybe Black Swan, although it could be Anti-Fragile. He goes into more depth about explaining. I've heard it on a couple talks mention it. But yeah, the growth mindset and always looking for new opportunities and ways of expanding things. But I liked what you said, like it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to one section of your business. It could be in a parallel business or maybe even totally unrelated.
Yeah.
What's your number 2?
Well, before I go into number 2, one thing I wanted to add was that even in the business that you're running or that you're a part of, the growth mindset also goes into maybe at some point you need to switch your niche, So, excuse me. So if I started serving bookkeepers, for example, but I realized that my product actually served financial advisors or specifically accountants who do taxes a lot better, having the growth mindset and flexibility to switch instead of just, well, this is where I started, so this is where I need to make it work. And instead, pivoting your business. I think that happens a lot. And that's what leads to more successful businesses is people who allow themselves to pivot. And it's something that I need to work on. And also that's why we had a podcast, honestly, at this point, it's a couple months ago, about that. So that was just one thing I wanted to add. The second piece or the second skill that I think is really important, especially for business owners, is I would say business finance skills, knowing at least how a P&L works, like what income versus expenses and then ultimately net income means. You don't have to understand how it all goes into a P&L, but you have to understand like what is income, what is expenses, and how much money do I have left over? Because if you don't have any money left over, you're not going to survive. And there was one particular person who I remember when I was doing accounting with you who did not understand how that worked and has been negative for like 4 years straight. And we were never really sure how he was making it work, but it was probably some small investment from a family member who was just keeping him afloat and letting his dream float, even though he couldn't actually make any profit off of what he was doing. So that's why I think that's a super important skill, because you're not going to survive if you don't have any profit ever.
Right. Yeah. In that case, it was a very expensive hobby. Right. Understanding how your finances is important for a business owner. The Venn diagram of understanding your business expenses and being in profit and being successful is not necessarily a circle. You can definitely be successful and know jack squat about income and expenses. But actually, I just was interacting with a company that I would say is exactly that way. More or less. The way the business works, they do a really good job of just keeping a high enough margin that I think I've seen them lose on one thing they did and they lost like $150. So, when that's your only loss for the month or whatever that I was looking at, that's pretty good. But
they knew the margin though, right? Like they knew that they were
I assumed that they had intentionally priced that. It wasn't just on the fly, having no experience in the area that they're working in. But yeah, you at least have to have a good sense for the margin. If not, you run the risk of really screwing things up. Or even with especially big purchase. Like that would be maybe your day-to-day operations are fine, but like big purchases can kill you. I actually just did a journal entry yesterday for a client who was flipping properties. And after we got everything in, the bottom number, gain on investment, was a whopping $500.
After how many months of a flip?
Yeah, right. I don't know how long he'd worked on it, but that doesn't take into account any of his equity. I mean, like his time in order to do it. I actually don't know if this client is subcontracting or anything. I don't think he is, now that I think about it. But yeah, it's just like, if you're going to do stuff like that, if you're running it that close, or there's a risk of that, you should really get somebody else to help you understand, because I mean, $500 after how many months is how many dollars
Yes,
per hour? 75
$100 a
cents
month.
per hour or whatever.
Let's
Um,
go.
yeah, it's just,
It's called
that's rough.
volunteering. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think as someone who works in a business, like as an employee, it's not as important to have the financial skills. However, if you want to prove that you know what you're talking about, maybe just going and learning them so that you can have some of those bigger conversations with the business owner might be a good idea. But I do think as a business owner, it's a lot more crucial to have that knowledge, especially if you are starting out and don't have someone doing your finances for you. If you have a bookkeeper, then they can do it for you. It's good to know that they're doing a good job by knowing like trending what's right and wrong, but in general, when you're starting out, I think it's important. The third skill, and I know we talk about this one all the time, so we won't, you know, linger way too long in this, but I think right now you could say tech/AI because it's huge. It's causing a lot of businesses to succeed. It's causing a lot of businesses to fail depending on how they use it. And I think knowing how to use it well and how to implement it well is really important. I would say the biggest thing is at least using a large language model like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity to just speed up daily workflows for yourself as a business owner or business professional. If you're a business professional in another business, make sure that that is okay with who you're working for. You don't want to use some shadow AI that no one knows about. But if it's okay, then I think you should. And you should learn how to use it well so that it can speed up your workflow and make you more efficient. And that will bring more value to the company.
We should make an AI called Shadow AI because that sounds cool.
There's probably one called
There
shadow AI. I've
probably
just
is.
never wonder what it
Or
does.
have somebody on your team that is good at AI. I think where AI is going to help the most, slash where it is helping the most currently, is like the clerical side of things. So I'm thinking about my clients that like work out of their truck, or are their office staff, and they don't use AI, but we are trying to work some AI into our workflows. And I also can't even predict how they would use AI very easily.
Yeah, I mean, if it's someone who's in their truck doing landscaping, the only way I could see it if they didn't have someone like you guys working as their staff would be, client intake, or basically a database organization
Hmm.
where the AI helps their CRM stay more organized. But since you guys are basically the ones knowing who they worked with, knowing what vendors they use, then it makes sense for you to be using the AI and them to just be doing the landscaping work
Right.
themselves.
Yeah. If you're making enough per hour that it's wasting your time to do the clerical work anyway, like just regardless, and paying somebody else to do the AI interaction might be a good idea. I actually had an interesting thought yesterday that I think I'm going to try this year since we're still in the first couple months. Just giving an Excel sheet that's basically just a general ledger to Perplexity on Perplexity Spaces, and maybe running my tax business out of it and record keeping on my bookkeeping software that I use, which is basically just a general ledger with some categories, and Perplexity on my phone, and just like open Perplexity and tell it, hey, I paid however many dollars for this tax return or the postage for the porch return, and see at the end of the year how well its general ledger tracked what I recorded, because it's getting so good. In theory, if I tell it, here are the categories that I have at the start of the year, it should be able to get a pretty darn close general ledger. And now maybe that's not a great example because my stuff would be a little simple, but like in general, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe there's an argument that like AI keeps removing third-party SaaS stuff as a requirement. So like, okay, the basic version of QuickBooks, just use an Excel sheet with Perplexity
Yeah.
until you need, I don't
Code your
know,
own.
bills or something.
Literally, it's just as easy to code your own. Well,
Mhm.
if you've practiced. But
Right, right. But
yeah,
in this scenario, it's like no code.
yeah,
Literally
yeah,
just, here's an Excel sheet, talk to the AI.
talk to the hand. No, yeah, no, for sure. It's gonna be very interesting. I actually have another book for you to read after you read Against the Machine.
Gosh darn it, Caleb.
I'm gonna send you a text today and say, "You gotta read The Machine." No, so another book about tech companies and how this one tech company it's a fiction book, but this one tech company basically bought all of the other tech companies and then bought all the governments and then but not quite in that sounds kind of dumb, but it was gradual, like it started infiltrating itself. It's just really interesting because yesterday I saw a an email from OpenAI that says, now you can see all of your friends on ChatGPT and basically going to try to become Facebook type of thing. I was like, all right, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's fine.
Too late,
Anyways,
ChatGPT. I already don't use my Facebook.
yeah, but yeah, I think those three skills are definitely some of the top skills that at least business owners need, and if you're a business professional, very much would help you, and I do not think would hurt you in any way if you had a growth mindset, learned some more about business finances, and learned how to use AI to make yourself more efficient. You got anything else, Josh?
I think those are good points.
Cool. Like and subscribe on YouTube. If you like the show, give us a 5-star review on Spotify, and we'd love to hear from you on email, jc.unscripted@gmail.com. That's the podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.